Southeast Nigeria is currently trailing in the Continuous Voter Registration Exercise (CVR), which commenced in August of 2025. The numbers from the region suggest a concern which has lingered for some election cycles in Nigeria. What could be the reasons for the dip in interest from the youths of Southeast Nigeria, and what needs to be done to change the narrative? As of September 7th, 2025, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) reported that over 3 million Nigerians have completed online pre-registration since the CVR exercise began on August 18th of 2025. Physical and in-person registration is also on the rise. Well, the exercise aims to expand the voter base ahead of the 2027 general elections, with a focus on first-time voters, replacement of lost permanent voter cards, and transfers. Southern states, particularly in the southwest, have driven the bulk of registrations, while the southeast lags significantly, raising concerns about turnout and mobilization efforts. What will the southeast do about this? This is the Eastern Eye. I'm Alex Obodo. Welcome to the Eastern Eye, a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. Tonight, I'm joined by Professor Sam Amadi. He's the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts. Thank you so much, Professor Amadi, for joining us tonight on the Eastern Eye.
Thank you, Udo.
All right, so but the first question will be, why are the numbers for the Southeast dwindling every election cycle, every voter registration cycle?
Well, I think numbers don't do it by themselves. I mean, they don't depreciate by themselves. The question then is, why are Southeasterners not coming out to register? I've seen people raise perhaps some concern as to the veracity and authenticity of those numbers, but I think they're authentic, they're veracious. The veracity is established. INEC has come to clarify. And as a pattern, a growing pattern now of Southeast seeming interest, at least sufficient interest in electoral system and political system. And so why it's happening is primarily because Southeasterners maybe some perverse effect of a good social capital, which is that people seem to be less dependent on government in Southeast. So the Igbo entrepreneurial, private-oriented nature, maybe more prone to individualism, also a sense of strength. We are strong. If you agree, we are God. So the Igbos, perhaps more than most of the Nigerian ethnic group, will be less inclined to be well mourned and look towards government. So this otherwise good social capital has created a dangerous, unintended consequence, which is that our people are also the least interested in the art of governing, interested in how resources are located for a public world, because they reckon that maybe they can make it. Everybody is struggling to make it. Everybody feels, because we have no caste, no class, so to say, everybody can be anything, everybody can make it. And so that creates that loss of focus and attention to matters political. And so what we reflect in data about registration is a story about the composite nature of the Igbo failure to be political in a significant sense.
So who should be concerned about these low numbers and the seeming lack of apathy among the young ones? Because the statistics from INEC is showing that people from ages 18 to 35 are more on the data now. And of course, a lot of them are still students, or people who mainly operate online. Who should be concerned about these low numbers?
All of us should. I mean, look, this number is devastating and almost destructive. So Abuja School raised this matter, put that information. We're talking to the College of Bishops and Archbishops of Southeast on how to remedy this. And we're talking to some politicians. I want to talk to businessmen. No, we should all be concerned. Now, first, it means that we can gradually become a political minority. Some would argue that we are almost there. If you look at the trend since 1999, we used to have very, large numbers. Somehow, with maybe coinciding with the aggression for Biafra, there become a disconnection. And we saw the census where some leaders of IPOB were alleged to have kind of, discouraged Igbo youth from being counted because we were expecting Biafra. So that is a lingering issue. If you look at election days, some of our people, to make out 2-3 days, and Nigerian electoral system is designed to be a little bit difficult and cumbersome. So you could spend hours to get registered. And so our people would say, why am I doing this? Nobody's paying me. And so we should not consider, because one, we're getting to become political minority. Second, is that Buhari may be criticized and attacked rightly for saying something as terrible as 95, 97, and 5%. And Buhari's thesis was that there was no way he was going to reward equally those who gave him 95 as against 97 as against those who gave 5%. Now, but the content, the insight should not be lost in that outrage. The insight is that politicians and political actors react according to votes. Votes are critical to allocation of resources. Votes are critical to the projects. Now look at, Nigeria is a competitive politics. That means you're going to have maybe one or two, the major ethnic group in terms of maybe numbers, population, in terms of region, as some would say now Northwest. But the Nigerian constitutional framework means it can't win except you spread. And that spread means that if you are a Southeast and you don't have the numbers, maybe less than 20% of your adult population registered to vote, and maybe end of the day, less than 20% of those who manage to register actually go to vote, then you become dispensable. So in political strategy, I can imagine a presidential candidate trying to say, where would the votes come from? I'm putting 0 on Southeast and say, you know what, we can win without that place. And when they win, they're going to think about the second term. And so they will be plotting return, victory, electoral victory. And they will also marginalize your region. So first, it has implication for Nigeria's distributive economy, where, even public social services are more like patronage to reward political actors and political constituency. The Southeast will lose. Even beyond politics, if you look at development agencies and institutions and their metrics for assessing what we do with now, you talk about youth population. Nigeria is a youth bulge, more of a youth. So if you look at the data and the votes, and Southeast has very low people who are youths on that register would constitute part of the data set which development partners will use to design interventions to say, where are the rest of you? Where are the youths who are likely going to perhaps be restive? And therefore, where do we have to put more of interventions, skilling, of all kinds of conflict management strategies and skills? So we are losing all around. And this is dangerous. And this is the fact that our governors don't see this trend. I mean, you can win and be a governor, House of Assembly, House of Representatives with 7 votes. It doesn't matter. Even if nobody goes out to register, no matter the number on the register, the governors, those who want to register, can still win. So private interest is not harmed. But the public good, the Southeast political future, and the Southeast economic future is at stake. And so that's why Abuja School sent out messages to all the bishops and said, look, we can weigh in. Now, the entry points are many. Even our businessmen should be concerned and say, okay, let's put up 50 million, 100 million to drive up research in our community. So what does that take? It means you arrange logistics and get information out, skits makers, get radio jingles, mobilize people to help to, maybe take people, bus people to nearest centers, get them registered. For those in universities, campuses, you probably free data to help them, to incentivize them to go out. Again, if you look at the last election, the only zone where a candidate performed more than 50%, 60 to 70, was Southeast. So Southeast gave Mr. P2B about 80% of the votes, thereabout. The other zones, if you look at the Southwest, Tinubu won with about 30-something or 40%, and Peter Obi, Atiku. If you look at North Central, where Peter also won marginally with maybe 36, 30-something, Tinubu 35. If you look at South-South, about 45 to 50. Southeast was the exception. Now, but in reality, how much was that vote? So if the total Southeast vote is 2 million, and you won 80%, which is extraordinary performance in an election. But you're not going to get perhaps about 1.6 million. Now imagine if Southeast had 4 million registered voters, and let's say about or 5 million or 6 million, for example, and 4 million came to vote, and Mr. Peter Obi scored 80%. He would have easily gotten extra 2 million votes. And if it's considered that the difference between him and Mr. Tinubu was less than 2 million votes, it means that perhaps we could head into a runoff, depending on the other issue around spread. So many people are saying that the 2027 election could actually be a toss-up, could be runoff, in which case nobody might actually get displayed, and then the two leading candidates will be measured by votes. So an extra 2 million votes could have made a difference. And so that's really why it's very urgent that Southeast recovers their political relevance by aiming at maybe 6 million votes in an election. It doesn't matter who they vote for. Now, if you have 6 million votes in Southeast, whether it's split evenly or whether they go mostly to one person, what that does is not about maybe Peter be winning or somebody winning, somebody voted for winning. It's about future elections. The calculation will now be that this is a swing vote. This is where we need to get them. We need to win these people to be able to, we can't risk these 6 million votes. And so anybody in power would be, putting some of these things into consideration to define intervention. We will take that region seriously. And that's what we want to really cause to happen. That should be a reawakening in that region.
So typically, the Southeast voting bloc can be a very big bargaining chip if they are properly brought out to register and they become real voters. And I listened to your analysis now, so meaning that it can be something that is politically bankable if you have a lot of voters who can indeed come out to vote. And the analogy you painted was actually spot on. Perhaps if you had all the people who ought to have voted, if they came out in 2023, the results may have been different. But there's another opportunity in 2027 for as many people that can vote can register to vote, but right now they are not coming out to vote. And it looks like there is silence from the political class. Why do we have that silence?
Well, I think it's a bit of selfishness. Like I said, you don't need large population to win local elections. So if you're going to look at elections within Southeast, some have less than 100,000 votes, people win. So if the numbers are meager, in fact, the smaller the better, so you can buy them up or you can read them out and so on. So that's one aspect. Two is a certain institutionalized poor understanding of politics. So like I said, if you're a Southeast businessman and you have your manufacturing outlet somewhere or your trading post selling your beverages or selling spare parts or whatever, and you say Southeast is not voting, well, how does it affect my trade? So, but if you are the other way around, in a community where people are civil servants, in a society where people are living off procurement, are you be wondering about the character of the people in power? Are they people who know me? Is it people from my side? Are they people who will remember us? So that's one failing. The second is that I think for some time, the Southeast has had a problem of having strategic leaders who think not about now, not about themselves, but who think about the region as a political entity that needs to survive and flourish in a competitive Nigeria. So those kind of strategic leaders will have a clear understanding of two things. One, they understand the external environment, because strategy is with two moves at a time. We are dealing with comprehending external environment as well as comprehending internal dynamics so as to reshape to deal with the external threats and leverage on external opportunities. So these leaders do not have a good reading of the Nigerian state as a state that is going to be competitive, already politically competitive, economically competitive. And in a competitive environment, you think in terms of relativity, relative to someone else. So if you are underperforming, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the commencement of the new registration, Osun State alone posted about 300-something thousand new voters. The whole South is less than 2,000. So a strategic thinker will see a risk, a danger in terms of comparative assessment. Look, these guys, we are competing with them. We're in a competitive environment. And your opponents are outperforming you by a ratio of almost 5 to 1 or 3 to 5 to 1, actually. In fact, it could be a ratio of 100 to 1. And you are here. So you would say, oh, this is bad. Not because I'm not sufficient to myself in my small environment, but because I'm looking at how my existence is impeded by the changing landscape I find myself, and the fact that my competitors are at performing and building greater capacity. So our problem is that we have got a tunnel vision, which is around gains, which are translated often into financial gains. And so those Southeast youths who on the day of election will put 2 goalposts in a square and start playing football and just don't care, don't give a damn. Well, the tragedy is that whether you give a damn or not, somebody will emerge as winner in any election. The last election was less than 29% of eligible voters in Nigeria voted. But it didn't stop INEC declaring a winner. It didn't stop the winner from taking over government and allocating resources. Today, the data is that Lagos alone had about over 4 trillion spent in Lagos alone, and Southeast was even not up to 1 trillion. Lagos alone, the entire Southeast. So that is the consequence of our narrow-mindedness. That should remove every misconception about the importance of politics. We don't need to be politicians. We don't need to all need to be politicians. And we don't need to depend on the state giving us, benefits and handouts. But we need to acknowledge that political office holders think politically, and they look at the numbers, and they follow the numbers. The decision making on politics somehow is influenced by a number, because those in power, Tinubu wants to go for second term. If you see the pattern, he was accused of going against the North, and the North says, we're going to punish you. If you see recent appointments, he's targeting those large number northern states. Kano has been a recipient of a lot of new appointments. Why? The president is responding to political stimulus. He needs to woo and win big in a place where data shows a lot of political votes are available. But if any of those states, the Southeast has been complaining, nothing has shifted, because data shows that perhaps we don't need to, opportunity cost. If we offend them and impress Kano or impress Kaduna or impress any of those big states or even Osun that's supposed to be a large number, then we are better off. So that's really the game here. And the reason why we're not seeing it because a mixture of political selfishness, a mixture of the fact that Southeast political leaders are mostly, politically illegitimate. They don't really seem to derive their power from their people, and they don't really seem to respond to their people. And thirdly, because we have this misapplied republicanism, individualism, that tries to minimize the value of political process and politics, and therefore discourage engagement with politics. Not just politics as election, not politics only as standing for election and vote or searching ballot box. Politics as interest in how a community, a commonwealth is governed.
I mean, there's a lot here, and one wonders how the Southeast can deal with this. We will take a break, and when we come back, I'll find out from you how the traditional institutions and the religious institutions, if you like, faith-based organizations, can help in galvanizing the people to register to vote in Southeast Nigeria. Stay with us. You're welcome back to The Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. My name is Alex Obod. I still have joining me from Abuja, Professor Sam Amadi. He's the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts. Thank you so much for staying tuned. So, what will be the role of the faith-based organizations? Recall that in 2020, build up to the 2023 elections, the church, as it were, helped in galvanizing people to vote. In fact, they even went ahead to direct people to vote for a particular political party. Is this crunch time?
Oh, yeah. Well, first, I think the faith-based organizations are perhaps the most credible, all to put together. I mean, we've had crisis of confidence and trust in some clergymen, but as an institution in the Southeast, Nigeria generally, but most in the Southeast, the faith-based institutions, especially the so-called Orthodox, the Catholic, the Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, and the Pentecostal also, they command a lot of credibility and strict, trust. So I think they should do more. They did a lot with vote, but first, do more about registration first. Because if you have few people who registered, they ask them to go and vote, and they manage to vote, it's still be a small, ineffective result. And I'm happy to say that the Association of Southeast, the PFN, is where in Enugu, I think Bishop Zeobodo, I've spoken with them, some of the leaders in the Pentecostal family, in the Catholic, in the Anglican, the Association of Southeast Bishops, Archbishops. I was speaking with their chairman, I think, Bishop Honor, and they are supposed to schedule a online for me to explain to them logistics. So they have done a lot, but they should do more now in a structured way. How do we make sure INEC brings these centers close to the people? How do we make sure that our parishioners, our members of our church, our congregation, they go out, spend a few hours and get registered? And if you look at also the tertiary institutions, the town unions are critical here. At the communal level, they have the convening power, the leverage to pass message in unconventional way through town crier, through other forms, and then facilitate process, for mass registration, which is really what we should be looking at this point. So we're looking at those options, and we worked out a strategic plan which we want to deploy to aid these very strong and present institutions to get the people, especially in the communities, to go out and vote. And then, of course, we expect that there will be people who just attend 18, or will be attending 18 maybe by the time 27 comes. And these people need to also register. And many of them could be in institutes of higher learning. And so the idea is also to engage the student union with the government, a little bit of pamphlets and posters with directions, with messaging, and where possible, also provide logistics to take them from campus to those places if they don't have resource centers near their campuses, and bring them back. So these are some of the interventions, and I think the church holds the key here, and the tertiary institutions. Maybe the finance should come from volunteering businessmen, public-spirited Igbo business leaders who could pay for jingles, who could pay for advert, who could support influencers with skits to further. We have now to December, end of December, for the first phase, I guess, when it will shut down again to prepare for elections. So those are some of I think the church and the tertiary institution they have a clear role to play, and they have been playing a role in the past, but this time calls for more structured, more intense, and at a scale.
All right. I mean, one hopes that this happens, and you have lots of tertiary institutions across Southeast, and we hope that the message goes into all those places. I wanted to also draw your attention to something away from the discussions on the INEC CVR, and that is the build-up to the governorship elections in Anambra State. Governor Soludo is obviously the man to beat in the election. He is the incumbent governor. You have some other candidates, Nicholas Okachukwu, and other persons. But what is more striking isn't about their discussion about the policies and programs and their manifesto. No, that's not what is occupying the discourse. What seems to be occupying the discourse is whether someone's wife is faithful or whether the man is the father of his children. So it takes away really from what people are supposed to be expected from those who are aspiring to be governor or deputy governor, whichever position they are running for to occupy in Anambra. So help us put this in perspective. The election is in November, and right now we are talking about going for paternity tests. What's going on? What's going on in Anambra State?
I think Anambra case is really pathetic, if you ask me, saddening, because if there was a state that should be exemplar in terms of decorum, in terms of civic, some level of civicness, it's a state that should exemplify honor, integrity, rigor, and seriousness in politics. Not just because of Soludo himself being a renowned academic, but the pedigree who have been there. We've seen, no matter what is happening, Bajojo, well educated. If you look at Okwatike, excellent technocrat and scholar, P2B, excellent businessman and philanthropist, well respected, a man of integrity. If you look at Obiano, where he might have some issues around one or so, but clearly he had his pedigree, in the corporate world before coming. And now Mr. Soludo, who is a renowned academic. So you don't expect the character of the state. Public leadership is very poor, I must say. For example, brutality, beating up, issues around, stories about, task force that act like gangsters. Now, a political campaign that even the less, in some of Southeast states and Nigerian states where you have less educated, contestants are less distinguished, you've not seen this level of gutter politics. And it's sad. It mirrors, in my view, in some extent, the quality of governance in the state. I think that the two leading candidates, or the two combatants in this episode, are distinguished persons. Look, Soludo distinguished as an academic, obviously. Somebody who has been a special economic advisor and governor of Central Bank, consensus that he did well. If you look at Senator Uche Kwunife, they say extremely distinguished. I mean, this woman is, in my own assessment, has a lot of traction in her community, highly respected, 2 or 3 times House of Reps, 2 times Senator. Apart from perhaps those who are governor and P2B or a few others, I think she has the highest pedigree in politics in that state. Not because, apart from being a woman, I mean, so she is somebody who is accomplished in many ways. Smart. I have interacted with her as governor of the DG of Governors Forum. I think she's a brilliant woman. I think she understands governance. I think she knows how to lead. So I don't think that, attacking her pedigree in that sense was the right thing to do. And also talking about paternity shouldn't have come in at all. That's basically for this. So I think what you got was a question around certificates and all that. Now, if Governor Soludo felt or thinks that, by the way, people mistake accreditation and fake, a fake certificate is a certificate that is forged.
Forged, yes.
If somebody claims I attended, even if it is a rubbish school, and he didn't attend, and they didn't issue that certificate, that's fake. But if somebody claims that maybe a particular school that I attended has not got robust accreditation, or not accredited by some regulator, that's not fake certificate at all. That is a matter of accreditation and credibility. So, for example, I know that so many US schools, like in UK, we talk about the Roselle groups, which are topmost, schools with the highest recognition in the UK. But many of the colleges, universities, people who have degree, including the one that the governor of Central Bank uses now, which is old school, are not in the Roselle group. That does not mean that there's certificates that are fake or not worth anything. It simply means that they don't meet the level of accreditation that the Roselle groups give to themselves. So even if it's fake or incredible, whichever one, it's a ground for the Governor Soludo to go to court and challenge the qualification. And we know by law, if the deputy is not qualified, then the candidate will not be qualified. So that would be a political plus for him. So I don't think it's, we know that politics is full of shout match and abuses, but I think they went too far. They went too far, and in my sense that I saw the way that fake were going up, and the woman responded, and the thing now got worse. So I think that's time now to stem this tide of vulgar politicking. It doesn't represent Anambra well. Anambra is a state that prides itself as the light of the nation. But so far, it's not showing any lights. So far, both in the temperament of governance, the character, whether it's P2B attacking or whether it's this or that, I think there is need for a better conversation around development in that state.
So, who needs to step up to wave that magic wand for the Red Sea to part? Because something needs to give way at this point. Who are the elders that will be called upon to ask them to sheath their swords?
The problem with the elders is that they seem to have all disappeared. Either brutalized. Nobody wants to be caught in the crossfire. I mean, somebody as elevated and great as P2B could have stepped in, called my elder brother, but you can see the sometimes gratuitous attack against him that, I mean, not in any way necessary, that you guys are not competing for elections. So all the gratuitous attacks kind of influence many people. So it seems to be that there's someone who was going to call the dogs back. We're going to see the dogs of war unleashed. But the point is that in this game, it's Professor Soludo who wears the toga of the urbane professorial guy here who is extremely smart. And I think perhaps he's the one who ought to say, let me live up to that name that I present, that face of urbane, enlightened, extremely brilliant professorial guy. So he has some responsibility in public eye to live up to that billing. And if he does, we're going to see, a change in the political, narrative and the way the campaign will go ahead. I know that politics is brutal and power is like intoxicant and it's a psychological. It creates psychological disarray and kind of bring out the beast in us, as Fela would say. But nevertheless, I think there's a public expectation of some level of decency in that state.
Are you concerned, Professor Amadi, that a lot of water may have gone under the bridge? If you look at what's been happening with some of the functionaries of government and the opposition. The other day, we saw a video of a commissioner for sports in Anambra being pushed around by those believed to be supporters of the opposition. And before now, we've seen the deputy governor in a face-off with one of the governorship candidates. Do you think that this is setting the tone for what this election will be like?
I think so. I think my prediction, except things change, that the Anambra election will be violent. Everything that makes for that violence is here now. I think it will be a violent election. I think there's a level of desperation. I think nobody's campaigning on what we have accomplished. Nobody's campaigning much on what we will do. We've seen stories about who couldn't win the election or who couldn't pass exam or who couldn't, I think it's going to be violent. And once you have actors so fixated on winning at all costs, so all the sides, not just APC, APGA now. But of course, although the most exemplary, in my view, have been Labour Party and AGC in terms of as a party. Their campaign has not been that, to the best of my knowledge anyway, high-pitched. But both PDP, APGA and APC are locked into what might be a violent election, in my view.
So, I mean, and I say this again, who will bring this to a stop? Is it like this is rolling out of control?
I think it will end by exhaustion. I mean, the mutual damage would perhaps create a de-escalation at some point. Those who think they are hitting the other person hard might discover that they are also getting fired in that process. So it will be, as some scholars think, some conflicts end by exhaustion. People just, get tired and know that they're not winning much, and their resources are finishing, exhausting, and they have not really delivered the clincher blow. And so they just backpedal, and then it might de-escalate. But my fear is that the level of the environment is now kind of, it's now fouled and, mobilized to trigger off violence either during or run up to the election or after. So, but I will be very happy that this prediction fails. It all depends on what the actors do now and in the future.
Do you think Anambra will have anything to say about this, either with their vote or with their actions?
Well, I think Anambra, in my view, look to me as fairly educated voters, so they probably know how to vote. They look at their future, they look at their past, they look at the candidates, they look at what is promised and what is delivered, and they look at what is being promised and how feasible, and they make a choice. One or the other. Again, election in Anambra has also been an election that is bought and rigged massively often. People forget that the incident of vote buying started sometime in Anambra state election. People forget that. So we're going to see an enactment of vote buying, it seems to me. So it's going to be a bad election either way.
I mean, when one listens to the narrative by the governor, Professor Soludo, saying that all the progressives have united, that's talking about his support for the president. But then the APC has a governorship candidate in Anambra State who isn't listening to that progressive rhetoric. Do you think that this is part of what is fueling the caustic exchange?
In a way, look, I don't think even Soludo believes his rhetoric of progressives are united. Where are the progressives? I don't even say the progressive. I mean, APC, it's laughable to describe APC or Tinubu as progressive in any significant sense. And I don't know about APGA. I was in APGA as a governorship aspirant in 2018. I don't see specific where APGA is unique. So it's just rhetoric, and it's permitted, it's politics. I mean, the total strategy actually is to, of course, he opposes P2B, and that's the good music to President Tinubu's ear. So he's not making any bones about it. He opposed P2B in 2023, perhaps supported Atiku Abubakar. Now he's supporting Tinubu, but that support really translates to nothing in terms of presidential election in the Southeast. It is clear who will win the election in the Southeast, very clear, except it's rigged. But it helps him so that the government in Abuja may not be invested in using federal power to stop him. So that's a good politics for his own part. But essentially, I don't think he believes that the rhetoric that they're progressing is politics. And Tinubu is warming up to it and playing the way it's played. So you make statements, sound bites for those in Abuja, those in Lagos, APC. But the truth is that the APC has a candidate, and I don't know the level of support, but I do think that party is party, and Tinubu is not going to come and mobilize votes. I mean, there are presidential power over security, INEC, and all that. He may not, unlike deploying forces like what we saw in Edo, where I think the election was rigged. I don't think they will rig out Soludo. So if Soludo will either win by his votes or won by his opponent. So that is good for him, that perhaps he has the president sympathetic to him because he's avowed enemy of Peter Obi, who is the president's main opponent. So it's clear where the president will like. I mean, he will see him as good.
The enemy of my enemy, they say. Isn't it?
Exactly. But in local politics, the APC machine will still grind. It will crack because it needs to win the election.
So the way you're looking at it, do you think it's going to be a tight race, or if you like, a close race in Anambra?
It go two ways. I think that's a strong opposition. I don't know how tight it will be. It can go to both ways. It can be very tight. We don't know how the other opposition party.
You have George Moore, you have
yes, I know. I don't know if those who don't accept Soludo will vote overwhelmingly for APC or overwhelmingly for George Moore, who I think is the next. The three horse race will be Soludo, APC, George Moore, in my view. Whether those who disaffection of Soludo is that large, and if so, where they go, predominantly A or predominantly B? There are two questions. How dissatisfied are Anambra people about this government? How satisfied are they? So a polling will help here. I don't have the data. Two, how would the dissatisfaction work? Will it be predominantly for one opposition or shared, in which case the incumbent wins by virtue of that split? But if it's overwhelming and it goes to one side, then you might see a close election where the incumbent is defeated. So for now, I want to watch further up to October to make to conclude on one way or the other.
That would be a good place to leave it. And I have to thank you so much, Professor Sam Amadi, the Director, Abuja Social and Political Thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the Eastern Eye for tonight. Do join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. My name is Alex Obodo. Good night.